It is that time of the year. 2025 is coming to an end, and I'm here to talk about all the books that I read in 2025. But specifically, this is a little bit more than just a wrap up. I'm going to tier rank all of the books that I read this year. So in 2025, I read 40 books. It's currently mid-December when I'm filming this, so it's possible that I might read 1 or 2 additional books in December, we'll see. And I'm also planning to film just a more general wrap up of my year. So if you're interested in getting a little bit more juicy details on all of the books, I'll be uploading that video also. I'm not sure if that one will come before or after this one, but nevertheless, that video will also be up on my channel if you want just a little bit more details on the books that we will be covering today. But that being said, let's get started. I have to figure out how to screen record my video because it's been a while. How to screen record on Mac. Figured it out. Let's get into it. So first I want to go through the tier ranking system that we have. So at the top of the top, the book Ate and Left No Crumbs. I will have this book stuck in my brain for a good amount of years to come. The next one is I Was Locked In. I loved this book. I learned something from it, or if it wasn't really that intellectually stimulating, at least I just had a good escapist moment with this book. I See the Vision. It's those types of books that sit somewhere a little bit higher than a 3 stars, but it's just not enough to be, anything that meaningful. It's like you enjoyed the book, you see what it did, you understood what the author was trying to put forward. You appreciate that, but it just wasn't enough to really speak to me personally. It was giving something. These are the books that were trying really, really hard. I could not say this is a bad book, but it got boring. At some point, I was just trying to figure out things to like about it because really it's not a book for me. This could have been an email. It says it all. Why did I read this? Jail. I don't even know how many books we're gonna have in here. I have one specific book that is in my mind, and if you've seen one of my latest vlogs, you know exactly the book I'm talking about. That will go in this, but other than that, I don't know if I'm gonna put anything else in here. These are books that are really just objectively bad. All right, we shall get into it. The first book that we have here is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This one I read at the very beginning of the year because I was doing a little challenge to see the Goodreads Choice Awards, like the winners of those specific categories, if they were any good, because I'm not really someone who reads a lot of contemporary fiction. This year, I think that changed a lot because I was doing YouTube and I tried to challenge myself in reading more of these. And this is particularly one video where that happened, where I wanted to read the best romance of the previous year. And this was giving something, okay? I would not categorize this as a bad book, but it did not speak to me. I find it quite bland. The female character, I found her to be just a caricature of basically any female character that you could ever find. So it just felt a bit impersonal to me, but I did enjoy some aspects of it. It just wasn't really something that got me excited at all. One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one, I think I'm gonna put in I Was Locked In. The premise of the story is really interesting. It's essentially following the story of a woman who is newly married to the love of her life, and unfortunately he has an accident at work and he dies. And so following his death, a couple of years pass by and she gets engaged to another guy. And then she gets a very strange phone call telling her that actually her husband has been found to be alive. So now she has to kind of make this impossible decision of what happens now. Your husband is back, but you're also engaged to this new other guy who you fell in love with. So I thought that was a very interesting premise. I just really, really enjoy Taylor Jenkins Reid writing. Like she's the type of writer who's just born in this world to be a writer, like she can just take anything and just make it interesting. She just has this talent about herself and about her writing. The ending pissed me off a little bit. It was quite foreseeable, so it didn't rock my world, but I had a really good time reading it. Wuthering Heights. So this one I read at the beginning of the year. I'm trying to remember specific feelings that it instilled in me back then. Because right now, the way my perception is of the book, 11 months later after I had read it, I think it stands somewhere at I Was Locked In. I'm just trying to remember if I didn't feel much more intensely about it back then, which could have been the case. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna rate these books based on my perception of now because memories can change over time and I don't actually remember if I felt any more intensely about it. I could have. I don't know. But for now, we're going to put it in I Was Locked In. I really enjoyed the story. This was a classic that was on my list for such a long time. It's the classic toxic love story, and it just derails into madness in the second part of the book. I also really love the November, very stormy atmosphere of the book. Very, very good. I'm not sure why it's not in the last year. I think it just didn't really speak to me. Like, I feel like books that are in the last year have something to tell me. You know, it's like I feel like the book is speaking to me. So I just feel like that wasn't really it. But I really love the book. Okay, next we have Far from the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. Ooh, this one is a difficult one to rate. When I did my tier ranking of classics, I said the exact same thing. The reason why it's difficult to rate is because the first part of the book I hated, and the second part of the book I really, really enjoyed. The first part of the book, the writing is so difficult to get through. I found that his writing was super ambiguous and very lengthy. I remember the specific paragraph where he said something along the lines of, oh, the main character, Bathsheba, she looked over there, or something like that. It was something about her doing a very basic action. And I kid you not, that was a paragraph like this to just convey the information that she was looking over there. That really pissed me off. And I felt like I had to work so hard to just get at the semantic information of the text that it just really took away my happiness reading. But in the second part of the book, I don't know if his writing changed, maybe even on purpose, or it's just that I got used to it. But in the second part of the book, just things started to happen and it got really super interesting. It's basically the story of Bathsheba, who is this young lady, and she gets courted by a couple different men, and she basically has to make the decision who is it going to be that she's going to marry. It's an interesting commentary on, you know, like how do women go about making these types of choices back in the day. And the second part of the book, the action really picked up, and it gave me Wuthering Heights vibes for sure. Like things were just kind of crazy. I don't know how I want to rate it. I feel like I need a whole new tier just for this one. I need something in between I See the Vision and I Was Locked In. Okay, I'm gonna put in I Was Locked In, because by the end I really was locked in. Then we have Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. This is a book that I finished this very month. It's a romance. It was my first romance from this author. I really enjoyed the first part of the book, and the second part of the book was a bit of a letdown. Not because the writing was bad or anything like that. It was mostly because the second part of the book was focused on spicy scenes. I would say the majority of the second part of the book was just spice after spice after spice. And I have no problem with spicy in a romance book. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, that's why they read romance books. It's not why I read them, but I mean, if that's your vibe, that's your vibe, and I respect that. The only issue I had is because we spent so much time on those sections, I felt that we didn't really have enough time to develop the themes that were really well woven into the story at the beginning. So I think I'm gonna put it in I See the Vision. Like, it was a good read at the beginning, and I did see the vision, but towards the end, it was just a little bit more of a letdown for me personally. Ooh, The Wedding People. This was the winner of the Good Choice Awards from last year in the fiction category, which is why I read it. I really enjoyed this book. I really did. This book, when you look at the cover, it looks kind of like, okay, it's just gonna be a cute little fiction, maybe a romance or something. Actually, it's such a profound book. I found it so well done. The themes that were explored in so many different ways. For example, the theme of motherhood is like really a big theme in this book, and it was explored through so many different perspectives and characters in this book. It wasn't just one sole perspective that the author is kind of trying to tell you, this is the way to see motherhood. So I found that it was just a story that was so well-rounded, and I found it just spoke to so many aspects of life and being a woman. I think I'm going to put it in 8 and left no crumbs. I kind of stopped thinking about it after I had read it, but now that I'm remembering all the wonderful things about the book, like it really just comes back to me. I'm like, you know, actually that was a really good read. Next we have Brandon Sanderson, The Hero of Ages. This is the third book in the first era of Mistborn. And do we even have to talk about it? I mean, where else could I have put it? There's just no other tier on this list that could fit this book. This whole entire series just brought me to my knees. I just loved this piece of fiction, and it really got me excited about fantasy in a way that I hadn't been excited by reading some other contemporary fantasies. I'm not gonna say too much about it because it's the third in the series and it's actually the finale, so if you haven't read the first two, then you'll be massively spoiled, but just read Mistborn. Okay, we're getting to the most juicy book of this whole entire year. This whole entire category was made for this book, okay? This is Christmas at Fireside Cabins by Jenny Hale. And this book should go to jail. I was trying to get into the most cozy Christmas mood, which is why I was like, let me read a couple Christmas romances. It's going to give me all those cozy, cute vibes. I don't need to use my brain too much. It's gonna be amazing. And it was not. It was so not. The main character of the story is the type of person I cannot stand in real life. I'm just going to spare us all the pain. If you're interested on a whole rant on this main character as well as the rest of the book, go check out my video on Christmas romances, but I'm just not gonna say more in this video because this video is gonna be too long. I have way too many things to say and I cannot be stopped once I start. Next we have The Witch and the Tar. This one is a wintry fantasy situation, cozy fantasy I would consider it even, and this I'll put in This Could Have Been an Emo. I really dislike this book. I'm super interested in Russian and just generally speaking Slavic folklore. I come from Romania. Romania is not considered 100% a Slavic country, but it's a country that has a lot of Slavic influence. A lot of our culture, our traditions are based on Slavic traditions. And so when I read about these tales, it kind of gets me little tinges of my childhood from back in the day. So this is based on Russian folklore, especially the very famous character of Baba Yaga. But this was so incredibly poorly done. Baba Yaga is such a complex character. She's supposed to be this old woman who is quite mean, quite rude. She eats children. She is, she's ugly. So her character comes with a lot of baggage. And what this author did is she took this complex character that could have been explored in so many different wonderful directions, giving her her story, explaining the character, explaining the bad, explaining the horrible things that she does. It doesn't mean that the readers have to understand them. It just means that it gives you an opportunity as a writer to really explore something that is complex and difficult. So she took the whole entire character and completely erased everything about what Baba Yaga is and just made her the most basic, bland bitch. So basically, the whole entire premise of this character in this book was she's actually a beautiful, tall, young woman. She has beautiful black hair and she's just beautiful in every way and she's so kind to everybody. And everything that you hear about Baba Yaga in previous works, everything is wrong. It's just misinterpretations and stereotypes that are not true. Wow, what a lazy approach. I have many more thoughts on this book, but that was my biggest problem. Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This rocked my world. This was my first Abby Jimenez book, and I'm going to put it in 8 and left no crumbs. I'm not a huge romance lover. You'll notice that there are quite a few romance books on this list, and the reason why is because I made it a personal goal for myself this year to try and read more romance. I always just stayed away from romance. I'm like, no, I don't like romance. I don't like cringy writing in romance books. It's true, I did come across some very cringy writing in some of the romances this year, particularly in the Jenny Hale book, also a little bit in Funny Story, but not all romance writers were cringy, and Abby Jimenez is actually a very good non-cringy writer. I loved her. It's essentially the story of a city woman. She's a doctor. She's very accomplished professionally, and she falls in love with a small town guy. I just really love the execution. I found that it was really well done. I love that she included the male POV, which is really rare in a romance book, and I found that it was all very realistic and just the speech was very natural. It just got me in all the best vibes. I love Abby Jimenez. She's a really talented writer. Legendborn. I don't know. It's giving something and I see the vision. Do I see the vision? I think I'm gonna put it in what it was giving something, just because it was really long, and I just felt like, because already I wasn't a fan of it, just the fact that it was so long made me even less of a fan of it, because I had to read so many more hours than I would have wanted to be in the story. I know a lot of people love the story. That's why I picked it up. I have a hard time describing my feelings around the story. It's a story that felt very bland, I guess it's a good word. The author tried to put in so many different elements that I found were very difficult to then wrap together and pull them into one cohesive story, in my opinion. I also thought that there was a lot of telling and not showing in this book. Overall, just the writing made it not really a book that really allowed me to be transported in a whole other world. The pacing was off as well. I remember like after 2 or 3 days, so many crazy things happened already, and I think she was already in love with the love interest. Like just a few days passed by and the world was turned upside down. It just felt like a book that had a lot of potential, but the potential was not met, at least to my expectations of what I'm looking for when I read a fantasy book. 1984 by George Orwell. This is absolutely going in 8 and left no crumbs. No crumbs were left on the table. This book blew my freaking mind away. This is a book that I didn't want to read for such a long time. I'm just not a fan of like political, historical works. It just, I don't know, they just never really speak to me. But once I read it, I just had to respect the craft. There's just so much about this book that was absolutely brilliant, and it's a book that brought me to a whole other dimension of thinking, and I learned so many things from this book. I engaged with so many arguments that I feel not a lot of people put forward when we discuss politics or totalitarianism or communism, as was the context for this particular novel. So many thought-provoking arguments that were just kind of sitting all behind seemingly very plot-forward story. I made a whole entire video on this book because I started reading it and I was like, no, I have to say something about it. I have to talk to a camera, even if no one listens or no one watches. I just have to talk about it. Anyways, if you're interested in my specific thoughts about this, please go and watch that video. This was the book that challenged me intellectually the most this year. It was a very surreal reading experience for me. The Emperor's Soul, I will put in I Was Locked In. This is a shorter book by Brandon Sanderson. I don't know, I think, is it considered a novella? Probably considered a novella. And I love everything about Brandon Sanderson. I don't even know what to say anymore about his books because every single book that I read of his is just amazing, and I just don't know. Like it's the same 5 things that I keep repeating about his writing and his works because they're all amazing and they're all characters are very well developed. The worlds are so expansive. Everything's so creative. Nothing is left unanswered. Like it's just 10 out of 10 everywhere. I guess the reason why maybe I didn't put it in 8 and left no crumbs, it's perhaps because it's a shorter book. So I didn't have as much time to spend with these characters where I really felt like they became part of me in a sense. But I just, oh my gosh, I truly enjoyed it. If you've never read Brandon Sanderson and you don't want to commit to the Mistborn books because they're chunky, you can read this one. This is a very short work of his. I think it's just a little bit above 100 pages and it's super enthralling and it's so creative. He brings in culture and artistry and oh my gosh, it's amazing. Next we have Dracul by J.D. Barker and Baker Stoker, I think it's his name. I think it ate and left no crumbs. I think that's the right fear for this book. I really enjoyed this one. This is kind of not a retelling, not a prequel. It's a weird companion story to the story of Dracula that is told by one of the great grandkids of Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula. And it kind of tells the story of Bram Stoker when he was a child, going all the way up until adulthood. Some of the experiences that he went through in his life to make him write Dracula and make him believe in vampires. It was really good, really well done. The only thing I would say, it was quite long, but I kind of didn't mind that it was that long, to be honest. Every time I picked it up, I just had this surge of like happiness in me. Like, oh my God, I'm going to read that again and I'm going to be in that world again. We follow Bram when he was a child, when he was quite sick, and he was being taken care of by a mysterious caretaker and kind of nanny that his mom hired for the family. And she did some really weird things to him that he cannot really remember, where she basically healed him. And Bram and Matilda, his sister, are slowly catching up that something is wrong and something is really weird with this nanny of theirs. And they kind of go on a little bit of a mystery situation where they're trying to figure out what exactly is happening, who is she, where does she come from, etc., etc. And I really enjoyed it. And then we go all the way until their adulthood, where everything kind of culminates and they find answers to their questions. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I just very much enjoy stories that are gothic and stories that are just kind of more dark and spooky. And this just hit the spot so well with those elements. Next we have Carrie by Stephen King. I think this one will go in. I can see the vision. I definitely can see the vision of this book. It was the very first Stephen King book that I ever read. To be honest, now that I'm thinking about it and that I read another book that I'm going to talk about a bit later on, I don't feel like it was the good book to start with. This was his first novel, and I think you kind of can tell. It's really not a bad novel, let me put it that way. Like, Stephen King is a really good writer, but I do feel like some of the plotting elements were not just as masterfully executed. The one thing that really got under my skin with this book is that the ending is very foreshadowed, and then you get at the end and the exact same thing that has been foreshadowed happens and nothing else. And so it just feels like the book, it has this culminatory effect to get to exactly what you were expecting and nothing else. So that was just a big letdown for me. But the rest of the book was really interesting. We are following the story of a girl in the 1970s-ish, and she's heavily bullied in school, and she also deals with a very difficult mother. And so all of these negative experiences that she's dealing with kind of culminate in her having telekinetic powers and being able to move stuff around with her mind. And then the remaining of the story is just kind of us following her journey and see where all of that kind of culminates and how those powers affect her, but also other people around her. The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. This was really, really, really good. I was locked the F in. I love this one. I also watched, previously to reading this, I watched the series, which I also really loved. And I'm really happy that I did watch the series first, because it gave me a really good preview into visualizing some of the things that Cixin Liu had imagined. I'm really, really bad. I feel, I don't know, maybe it's just in my head, but I do feel like I'm really bad at imagining the worlds that writers create. Like, I feel like I read sometimes something and I'm like, is this how other people imagine it? Am I not skilled enough to imagine this world that is looking and sounding incredible? And so I'm really happy that I watched the series first, because that really allowed me to transpose those images and that kind of visual aspect into the book when I was reading it. And I found that very helpful for someone like me that I think is not very creatively oriented. Just in general, this story is a masterpiece of sci-fi. I mean, it has mystery elements. You don't even get to understand really the sci-fi elements up until a bit later in the book, which I thought was really well done. It brings in math and history and physics. It's so cool. Loved it. And I'm not a sci-fi reader. This was the first sci-fi, I think, that I've ever read in my whole entire life, and it was really good. Next we have The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I think I'm gonna ruffle some feathers with this one. I don't know where to put it. I think I'll put it in I See the Vision. But I was really thinking about putting it in It Was Giving Something. I see the vision in the sense that I see the social and literary significance of this book. I do understand the necessity of writing about mental health in the way that Sylvia Plath did so generously, in a sense, because this was, a lot of it was based on her own personal experiences in life, which I think is incredibly brave to write a character that is essentially based on yourself for the whole world to read and to know all of your deepest secrets. That being said, this book felt flat for me, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I think part of it was the bleak tone of the book, which I think in some sense is a bit contradictory, because obviously you need to have this kind of bleak tone because we're talking about really bleak and sad and horrible things. So it's not like I would have expected the tone to be super happy. So I'm not exactly sure what I was looking for. So I'm not sure what didn't work for me in this book, but I just know it didn't. Possibly my expectations were a bit too high, and I was wanting to learn more, and a lot of the experiences that she's described, I mean, a lot of them were very relatable to me as someone who has dealt with pretty significant mental health issues in the past. And maybe because of those experiences, I just felt like I didn't really learn anything new. Also didn't feel that attached to the main character, although it's weird because I should have felt attached, because again, it's all of those experiences I really could relate to, but for some reason I can relate to her. See, I have a really hard time articulating my feelings about this book because I just know something didn't go for me, but I don't know why. So I'll just leave it at that. So this is Love by Tracy Andreen. This is the second book in a duology. The first one being So This Is Christmas. This is a YA romance. I think I'll put it in I See the Vision. fiction. I had a good time while I was reading this. You know, it's very YA, so it's very much about kids doing stupid kid things. The immaturity in this book really got on my nerves at some point, and then I was like, okay, you have to chill because it's normal. These are teenagers, these are not adults. But the writing is also quite cringy. I liked it in a sense that, okay, I could see that it was cute. We had some cute moments. You know, they went on the ski trip with their class, so that was cute. The atmosphere was nice, but nothing much else was nice. We then have the Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Please don't hate me. For me, personally, this could have been an email. I had such a hard time getting through this book. I really, really disliked this. I felt like it was just so pointless. Like, it really felt like, why did I read this? I think I'm going to be giving up on the whole cozy fantasy, cozy romance fantasy genre. It's just not enough to keep me entertained. And although there was a little bit of a plot here, it wasn't enough for me to want to keep reading. It felt like it had all the elements that I should have liked. The female academic thing situation, which I could relate to because I am a woman who is also an academic. It had the nature elements. I'm a huge nature lover. So it had a lot of really cool stuff, but then when I read it, I was just bored throughout the whole entire time. It is what it is. It was a miss for me for sure. Just for the summer, my Ambi Jimenez. I think I will put it in I Was Locked In. I really, really enjoyed this book. As you can see from the spread, I read quite a bit of Abby Jimenez this year because I fell in love with her writing, and it's just really good. I don't have much else to say about it except it was really good. It was a very fun summertime read. Highly recommend. Abby Jimenez, A Situationship. I will also put in I Was Locked In. This is a short story that was just talking a little bit more about one of the characters in Just for the Summer. So this is following her particular relationship situation with her own love interest, but it's a short story, so this is not a full-length novel. I also really liked it. It was very sweet, it was cute, it was short, loved it. The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley, I think was her name. This one will go in I See the Vision. This was a book that I was anticipating a lot, and I had quite high expectations because a lot of people talked about it. Here's the thing, I could see what this book did, right? Like I think the commentary, the social commentary in this book is nailed in. Like, I get it, I see it, it's interesting. I feel like just the commentary is just part of the story for me. I also have to have some sort of at least interest in the actual plotline and the story. And while I thought the commentary was a 10 out of 10, the plot, characters, and the more artistic side of the story, if you want to call it that way, I thought was not really it for me. I just couldn't really relate to anyone. I felt like it was just a bit bland and just there, and it didn't really speak to me on a personal level. So it's an interesting book to think about rather than to read. That's kind of my experience with this one. We then have The Blue Castle by Ella Montgomery. This will go in I Was Locked In. I really like this one. This was a cute little story about Valency, who's a 29-year-old, and she is dealing with kind of a weird family. They like have a lot of expectations from her, and Valency is this quiet little girl. She's never done much in her life. She didn't explore any of her interests. And then she's let know by her doctor that she has a fatal disease. And so following those news, she starts to kind of take a little bit of a different approach to her life, realizing that she only has a couple months to live. Nothing too crazy there. I didn't like it as much as the Anne series from Ella Montgomery, but it was a good story. It was cute and fun. We then have Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This will go in 8 and left no crumbs. This story, I wouldn't say was perfect. I do think that the pacing in the story was a little bit off, but again, very interesting, very creative. It just blew me away. And I loved the characters in here. It's essentially the story of a long lost city of gods. So people who were really, really powerful, they were very beautiful, they were very opulent, very influential, and something happened in this particular world, a very strange event, and the city and the people living there kind of disappeared, and those who didn't disappear, they just became very, very sick and ill, and they're no longer able to exist in the rest of society. And so we're kind of following that cohort of people, as well as other people that are being brought in that are falling to the sickness. And we kind of see how they try to coexist and try to fund the government for themselves in some sense. Like they just try to figure out a way to exist outside of anybody else because nobody else wants to be in contact with them. And also we get the perspective from the outside world. Highly encourage you to read it. This was really, really, really good. Next we have Misery by Stephen King. I will put this one in, I think also I See the Vision. I think I liked it just a little bit more than Carrie, but it was also a little bit longer. So at some point I did get a bit bored, but when the action started to pick up, then I was like, okay, we're going somewhere. As opposed to Carrie, this one, the execution of the pacing was really much better, I found. And there was really this sense of like crescendo of, okay, we're really gonna hit a big boom at the end. So I really like the ending much more. So I could definitely see the vision here. Again, I really enjoy Stephen King's writing, but it's not a story that grips me and interests me and speaks to me personally, so I just couldn't really rank it higher than that. Then we have The Bewitching by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I think I'll put this one in I Was Locked In. I really, really enjoyed this story. This one is following the perspective of three women who, across time and space, are a little bit interlinked based on one specific witching tradition. It was really cool. Part of the story is at a university, so it has those dark academia elements, which I really, really love. Overall, a good spooky fall read. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This will go in I Was Locked In. I just love all her stories. They're really well done. Solid plot, solid character development, just all around very good. The Secret Society of Irregular Witches. I think I'll put this in Was Given Something. The feelings that I have about this are very similar to the feelings that I had about Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, where, you know, it was a cozy fantasy type story where the stakes are quite low. And I don't know, I was bored. I didn't care, and I think I'm giving up on cozy fantasy. It's just not for me. Next we have Like Water for Chocolate by Laura Esquivel. Ooh, this one I really liked. I think I'm gonna put in 8 and left no crumbs, to be honest. I really, really enjoyed this one. It's a very creative writing approach. We are starting each single chapter with a recipe that is traditionally Mexican. And the reason we're doing that is because the main character, Tita, was she the youngest or the eldest of the family? One of the two, I can't remember. But essentially her role, being either the youngest or the eldest, is to stick around in her family and help her mom in the kitchen and with familial duties. Like that's kind of the tradition and the expectation in her family of what she has to do. But Tita, she also has other aspirations. She would like to get married, and there's a man that she really, really loves. We get Tita's perspective through all of these dishes and these recipes that are included. We don't not only get the recipes, but we also get to see after that in the chapter how those recipes are included and how the food that Tita is cooking, the magical vessel for her feelings, for her frustrations. I don't want to spoil too much, so I don't want to say too much, but this is really, really well done. I think the reason why it's really in the top tier for me is just because of that creative element. Like I've never seen a book written in this way. Although it's very profound, it's also very light read. So I find it just very masterfully balances the complexity of the issues that are explored with just making the story very accessible and very approachable to the readers. Next we have The 11th Method by Brandon Sanderson. Okay, this is a very short story by him, and I think I'm gonna put in This Could Have Been an Emo. I think it's just because it was such a short story. There's nothing really here that is grabbing my attention where it could have been an emo. We're then going into The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. I think I'll put this in I See the Vision. So this is a American classic of the town of Sleepy Hollow and the headless horseman who is traumatizing this town. And we are following the perspective of Ichabod, who is the principal of the school in this town. And he's like in love with Katrina Van Tassel, who is this beautiful lady. And then we are also set in the night of Halloween in some portion of the story. Everything sounds great to me, but then I read it and I'm like, I can see what is trying to be done in this book. I can see the vision, but I just can't feel the vision. The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. This goes in 8 and it left no crumbs. This is a retelling, reinterpretation of the story of Frankenstein from a slightly more female, feminine perspective. So we're actually following the whole story from the perspective of Elizabeth, who is the betrothed of Victor in the original story. In the original story, we only get her perspective through a couple letters. I thought this was so well done. This really, really surprised me in the level of complexity of the writer to approach different themes that were brought up in Frankenstein and really bring them into the story and develop them even further. I also thought that she did a marvelous job at the characterization of Elizabeth. It was a story of, yes, female empowerment, but also to what extent are we able to accept and enable people to do bad actions for our motivations, regardless how right and reasonable those motivations were in the beginning. I thought that was such a well done discussion, and I really enjoyed the story. The Call of the Wild, this will also go in Ate and Left No Crumbs. I absolutely loved the story. This is peak winter read if you're interested in something wintry, but this is not the romanticizing winter type of wintry. This is the brutal type of wintry book. This follows the perspective of Buck, who is a domesticated dog. He's living his peaceful little life until he gets sold in Yukon, where he has to work as a sleigh dog in the brutal Canadian winters with very little resources, a lot of brutality from other animals, with abuse from some of his owners. Like, this is just the most heartbreaking story. The reason why I really enjoyed it is really how the author characterized Buck and just the animal instinct in general. I found it to be very realistic and an approach that was much more rooted in nature and reality, and not as much on how humans would like to perceive animals or how humans would like animals to be, but rather how animals actually are and what certain actions or what certain things mean for animals. Obviously, this is an interpretation, right? Because we're humans writing about animals, so we don't actually know. But I just found the way that he went about it was really creative and really realistic, and I really enjoyed it. The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. I was locked in. I really enjoyed the story. Could I even say this ate and left no crumbs? I think it didn't speak to me personally on that level, but it was a really good story. It's essentially the story of Halloween. We are moving across time and space to uncover how Halloween is really a collective experience and a collective holiday that is based on different traditions from so many different cultures. I really enjoyed it. It was a cute, very fast read. I think it's actually geared towards a young audience, so this is a children's book probably. And I think there's also an animation movie made, which I'm really excited to watch. It was really just sweet book. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This one, I think I'll have to put in Ate and Left No Crumbs. It's a very short book about the difficult lives of two men going about trying to make some money for themselves. I think, if I remember correctly, it's set in the Great Depression, and they don't really have a house, they don't have a place to stay, and so they just go from location to location trying to make money, but also trying to find a location to stay because they don't have anywhere to go. And their overall goal is to save up enough money to buy themselves a smaller ranch to live for the rest of their lives. One of the men in this story has intellectual disabilities, and so this makes it even harder for them both to coexist in society and to go and get jobs because of prejudice. The ending is the most phenomenal ending that I've read probably in all of the books this whole entire year. The ending of the story will stay with me for such a long time, and I just highly recommend it. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I think I have to put it in Ate and Left No Crumbs. This is quite a recent read. I read it about a month ago. This is a very interesting story that I went into it thinking it's going to be weird because I heard a lot of reviews from people saying this was a weird story, and I braced myself for that fact, and then I went to it and it was indeed weird. So I felt like it's good to have good expectations of this is not going to be the type of story that you've ever read before going into it, because otherwise I think you're going to be just caught off guard. I don't even know what to say about this book. I don't want to spoil anything. This is just the type of book you just read and you just let your mind and your heart dictate how you feel about it. And the way I feel about it is that it should be in the top tier. This Is How You Lose a Time War. I'll put in I Can See the Vision. It's kind of a blend of different genres. It's a very poetic, lyrically written story. It's also a bit of a sci-fi story of two warriors who are kind of sending letters back and forth to each other through time and space. So they're essentially enemies. And despite that, they kind of fall for one another. I like this book in the sense that I could see what it did for literature. I could see how it pushed the boundaries of what sci-fi could be. I like how it tried to push the boundaries with language and how language can look like in a fiction story. But aside from that, it's not a story that really stuck with me. I never even thought about it after I read this book. It's just a story that was there, and just because it was a bit far-fetched from what I typically read, I wasn't able to connect to it as much, but I appreciate the craft. The Alley of Law, I will put this in I Was Locked In. I really enjoyed the story. This is the first book in the second era of Mistborn, and I read this one last month. The way I would characterize this is Mistborn Era 1, but make it fun. In Mistborn Era 1, everything is so serious, everything is so somber, everything is like, it's like the end of the world. Mistborn Era 2 has the exact same elements, the same world building. Of course, there's advancements because we're set in the future 300 years, so there's advancements in terms of electricity and guns and even more elementic powers, but it's just not as high stakes. Like, things are just a bit more chill. And I really enjoyed that. It was really, really fun. I really love the chemistry between the two main characters, Wax and Wayne. They're just incredible friends, and they have this kind of male comedic relationship that I can't really put in words. It's two guys just being guys, and I love them for it. It was amazing. We then have Thornhedge. This could have been an email. I'm so sorry. I did not like this. From what I can recall, a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, I think. I think this category just says it all. It's like a book that I wasted my time reading. There's no value that is brought to my life. I didn't particularly enjoy the book. I didn't enjoy the characters. I didn't enjoy the world. I didn't think that anything there was something that would really inspire something in me. And so, unfortunately, this was just not it. And then the last book that we have here is The Mysteries of Winter House, which is the second book in the Winter House series by Ben Gutterson. I'm not done with this book. I'm still reading it, but I'm nearly done, and I'll be definitely done by the end of 2025. This will go in I Was Locked In. I really love this book. I love the Winter House series. It's this middle grade series of two kids who are stuck in Winter House, which is this beautiful, huge hotel that is secluded up in the mountains, and they just go about and get tangled in a bunch of different mysteries and try to uncode a bunch of different things in the hotel, and get to meet a lot of different people from all around the world. Some of them are celebrities, some of them are really mysterious people. It's really fun. It's just a cozy winter fun read, and that's all I need from it. There we have it. Looking at this, it does look like I enjoy more books than I didn't enjoy, so I'm very happy about that. That's a good year in my books. If you've read any of these books and you have different interpretations or different feelings about them, please let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.